Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our health condition workshop on crisis, grief, and loss. And hi, my name's Paul.
Good evening. This is Beth.
Hello, Bev, and
Hi,
hello,
Paul.
all of you out there. Welcome to our workshop. We're going to talk about crisis, grief, and loss mostly. And if you are here because you are getting CE credits, just let us know in the comment section. I know a few people signed up for that. Let me know that you're here, and you can get one CE credit. And also, if you're interested as we go into learning the points, Bev's going to take us through the points after we have our speaker. And we're going to, you can go to justtouch.com/workbook. And you can download the workbook that Bev's going to take us through at the second half of the workshop. And so that's justtouch.com/workbook. And we'll be going over that in detail. So, again, if you're here for CE credits, let us know. Hello, Kai from Chicago. And
Hello, Kai.
So we have Karen Arnold, and I think we're just going to go right into her presentation. It's about 25 minutes. If you have any questions for Karen, her website is going to be listed there, or you can put it in the comment, and I will pass those on to her. She had to come a little earlier. So let's just go right to her, and then we'll be with you to teach you the points. Hey, everybody. We
My sister-in-law saying it's been 6 months and that I should be feeling better by now, but I don't feel.
Okay, so we had a little mistake there. We're going to have the speaker go on again because I guess the sound wasn't working. Hey, everybody. We want to introduce to you Karen Arnold, who has an awesome website called Grief in Common, and she's going to talk to us about grief and loss. And welcome, Karen. Thanks for
Thank
joining
you.
us and sharing your
Thank you.
expertise with us. So we're
Absolutely.
going to just let you take over. Go for it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for having me. I've actually been learning a lot about BioTouch and all that it has to offer. So I'm here today to talk to you about grief. I've been actually working in this field for about 20 years, facilitating bereavement groups, working one-on-one, doing community education. There's so much that I've learned in being able to do that. And I find that a lot of times for people, one of the challenges in grief is just understanding what's going on. There's just this feeling that everything is so foreign. I've had people explain it as like an out of body experience, that they just feel so out of touch with themselves and with their lives. Nothing looks familiar anymore. And I've had people say that they're worried that they're doing it wrong. Everybody else seems to have this figured out. And here they are struggling. It's taking too long. It's been too hard. So I think one really important thing for people who are grieving is to just understand this process a little bit different. So I have a couple of notes here and some things that I wanted to, review along the way. And I wanted to start just by saying that no two losses are the same. So when people come to me, they often ask, well, how long is this going to take? When am I going to feel better? And what can I expect from this timeline here? And people have an idea, maybe not so much from themselves, but even from how people around them are acting. Well, my sister-in-law is saying it's been 6 months and that I should be feeling better by now, but I don't feel better. I'm still really struggling. So I think there's a lot of things that we need to look at and take into consideration. None of these are going to create some perfect formula to help us understand how long it takes. But for me, it's just to help people understand that it probably takes longer than you would expect, or your sister-in-law or anybody else, to expect of what's realistic. And that's one thing I really want in the advice that I give and the help I try to provide is some hope, but mixed with some reality. A pretty equal amount of both, I think, is really important, because if we're not realistic about our expectations of what this is going to look like, then we're going to always feel that we're somehow doing it wrong or falling behind. So no two losses are the same. What impacts a person's coping or their timeline toward healing is going to be who they lost, how it happened, when it happened, what their relationship was to that person. And that's not to say that we only mourn people that we really love or are really close to. We can mourn complicated relationships. We can mourn people that we haven't seen in a very long time. We can mourn people from a different part of our past. But in general, I find the people that I'm working with that are really struggling are those who had probably a daily contact with the person that they've lost. That definitely seems that proximity in some ways is going to play a role in how much we're impacted. So for some people that may be hard. Let's say they've lost both their parents. And I have actually a person who fits in this situation, and his dad died several years ago. He was very close. It was very, very difficult. When his dad died, he moved in with his mom, took care of his mom, and spent many wonderful years together with her before she eventually passed. He found the impact of his mom's passing to be much greater. And it wasn't because there was a different amount of love for each person, but his role changed. He had become a caregiver and then was no longer a caregiver. The time that he spent, that he was used to spending with his mom, he had really come to count on her, as his companion and as someone that he spent his time with, who he worried about, who he cooked for, shopped for. So he was struggling with why his mom's loss felt harder. But again, it was that proximity. It was the way his role changed so much after the loss of his mom versus the loss of his dad. It was a very big difference. So it wasn't, again, as much about how he felt about a person, but how their loss impacted his day-to-day life. So there's all of those things that we're looking at. It's the same reason why, again, going back to the loss of a parent, somebody that at work may seem to be doing fine after their mom died 6 months ago, but you're really, really struggling, with a similar loss. We don't know, again, what the circumstances were, what their relationship was, all the background and everything else. We come into these losses with so much. So we just have to remember how individual this loss is, how individual we are, how individual our grief is going to be because of it, and throw the timelines away, the expectations away. Expectations are a big part of life, and especially a very big part of grief. And the more we can sort of level our expectations and not make them unrealistic, I think the better we'll find, this process goes for us. So even with all those differences, so I'm going to say something almost very different now. There's so many commonalities that I think exist. And what's really interesting now that I have the website and I've been doing this work, I was doing it in my local community for years and years before starting the website. And that just really opened me up literally to the whole world. I spoke to a woman from Nigeria this week. I've, had people from Australia and England, Scotland, it's pretty amazing. And it would surprise people to know everybody's coming with the same issues. Everybody is really finding themselves to have, again, different timelines, relationships, but when it comes to sort of the signs and symptoms of grief, there's going to be a lot of commonalities. So I think that that's an important thing to know and to talk about. So when we have a loss, we expect to be sad. We can anticipate that. That's what they show in the movies. Someone dies, we cry, we miss them. Really simple, but grief is so much more complicated, that so much more multi-layered than that. And real grief is going to actually mean 100 different emotions, feelings, thoughts, feelings, actions that are going to go with it. So for example, a lot of people who are grieving feel exhausted all the time. They're always tired. Even if they're not doing anything, they could sit on a couch all day and be exhausted at the end of it and then have a difficult time sleeping at night. So that's very, very common. Just the mental process and the emotional process of grieving takes so much energy, more energy than we could ever imagine. And so we're all used to having a certain amount of energy, and we like to get things done, and we like to do things, and we like to go places, we like to be efficient, we like to be productive, and suddenly it's difficult even to fold a few pieces of laundry or to get the dishes put away. Suddenly that feels like too much. So in the midst of this very big loss, there's also going to be this feeling that I don't even recognize myself anymore. I'm exhausted all the time. I feel forgetful. I feel confused. I feel irritable. I'm struggling to feel like I can even, be around people. Grief is very isolating, but then at the same time, it's not always that people feel automatically comfortable around others, even friends, families, coworkers, because again, it feels like maybe they don't understand, or that their connections, the things that they would talk about before, they don't really want to talk about now. They're not as interested. They just don't feel as much a part of things. So all of those things are also grief. That's grief too. It's not just the sadness. In fact, I say to people sometimes, the sadness can almost sort of be the sweet part. That's the part we understand. That feels like the direct connection. I miss them. I love them. That part we get. But feeling angry, feeling irritable, feeling confused, feeling like we can't remember anything, it's just so frustrating that at a time when we really need ourselves to be at our strongest, we feel our absolute weakest. And it's very, very, very common for people to be feeling that. So that ends up sort of spiraling into people having self-esteem issues when they're grieving. And that can be really difficult to, I think, even understand the impact of that, but then to manage, what do we do with that? So, and I'll get to that, what we need to heal. But another thing that's important to recognize is that when we lose someone we love, especially that person who we really spent a lot of time with and we were so connected to, often people in our lives play more than one role. And so I say, it's not like on that day you lost one person, it's like you lost 10 people. You lost your friend, your companion, your shopping buddy, your confidant, your cheerleader. You're losing a person that played so many different roles in your life, and nobody else and nothing else is going to quite be able to fit or play that role that they played. And then there's more practical things. Maybe there's a loss of income. Maybe a person's housing situation had to change after their loss. Maybe we're talking about the practical help with a spouse or a partner. We shared a home, we shared duties, and I did this around the house and they did this around the house, and suddenly I have to do all of it. And by the way, I didn't do that stuff before because either I hate it or I don't know how to do it. So now I'm having to, on top of this exhaustion, add doing things on my list that I either don't like to do or don't know how to do. And so again, you could just see how it pulls a person down more and more. All of this is so important to know because again, we need to validate why grief is so hard, why it lasts so long. Because the other piece of it that we've lost with our secondary losses is a future, the future we were supposed to have with that person. The babies that are born that they're not going to get to see, the weddings that they're not going to go to, the trip that we were supposed to take together. We have this vision of what life is supposed to look like, who's supposed to be in it. And anything that changes from that is going to turn into a loss and to a grief down the road, so that even people can be hit really hard at the holidays 3 years later, or at a birthday party 5 years later. Oftentimes, one of the things I've heard that I like is that the weight of the grief doesn't change. It's our ability to carry it that does. But there's times where we just don't feel strong enough. And that can be because of our own physical health. Something else happens in life. What's really hard about all of this is we don't get to have these losses and then just go to some island and stop everything and focus on this and take care of ourselves. All of the other stresses of life are continuing to happen. And that can mean other losses, changes in job, changes in relationship, like I said, our personal health. And so we're trying to deal with so much with all of this that's happening. So it's a lot. So when people say to me that they're still having a difficult time 6 months later, 15 months later, 3 years later, it's like, well, of course you are. You're going through so much, and there's no practice for it. There's no handbook for it. There's nobody who can tell you, hey, listen, this is exactly what I did and this is what worked. And if you tried it, it may not work for you. So you're having to figure all of this out from scratch, starting at a time where you don't want to do it. You don't have a lot of energy, motivation. So it's really, really challenging. It's really difficult for people to do that. So I think what we're looking at then, it's like, okay, fine. So now I know all that. What do I do with all of that? Well, one thing when I talk to people about what they need to heal is quite a few things. And I think the first is going to be some patience, just some recognition that we're in for a long haul here. This is a marathon. I say often, it's like watching your own hair grow. Technically, it's happening, but you cannot see it. And it seems to take a very, very long time. And that's what grief can feel like for people, is just takes a tremendous amount of time. So we have to find some patience for ourselves, patience for the process, and patience for people who don't seem to understand, because that's a big issue for people a lot of times, is trying to find good support from people who are going to get it. Getting support, being around other people who are open to connecting at a time like this can be very helpful, tremendously helpful. It sounds like that's some of what BioTouch can probably provide through support groups, whether it's in your community, online, or individually. I think everybody needs to have a place and an outlet for their grief. I think we also need to really look at self-care. And I think self-care can come in many forms, because if we know that we're looking at time, and time itself is not the great healer, but it does allow us for an opportunity to adapt and to adjust and to have some trial and error and to see what's going to work and to try and figure out what this next phase or this next part is going to look like. But in the meanwhile, as we're trying to get through those long days of hoping things will eventually get better, we do need to take good care of ourselves. So there's the self-care that you can see, which is going to be yoga, meditation, napping, eating well, taking a walk, spending time with your pet, holistic practices, whatever that may be. There's the self-care that you can see. And we absolutely want to take advantage of as much of that as we can, because those things truly do help. In addition, we also want to think about the self-care you can't see. And that's where being compassionate with ourselves is really important. This is a time where we have to almost sort of approach ourselves as we would a very, very good friend. We're so much tougher on ourselves than we are with other people. Our expectations for ourselves are very high. We're not very forgiving of ourselves. And yet we're able to do that for other people all the time. The example I often use is that I'm clumsy and I will drop things, in the kitchen, wherever it may be. And my first thought in my head is, oh, so stupid. It was so stupid that I did that. I have 2 daughters. I would never in a million years, if either one of them dropped something, call them stupid or tell them that that was stupid. But I'll do it to myself in a heartbeat. So we have to kind of make a shift in that change. And there's no better time to be making a change with some of our automatic responses and some of maybe the bad mental habits that we have. You know, if we're already doing this work of grief, why not pop the hood, see what else needs to be fixed under there, and see if we can actually come out of this a little bit stronger and a little bit better even. Not to say that we ever wanted this to happen or that it's a good thing, but again, if we're doing the work, I find people can use that time to work on things like trust issues or, you know, other things that have gone on earlier in their life, because it takes so much to get through grief. So we want to be compassionate. We want to be a good friend to ourselves. We want to be forgiving for the things we feel like we're not doing as well as we should. We actually want to take the word should out of our vocabulary. I should be doing this. I should have done this, whether it's second guessing things going back to the loss itself or with the things that we feel we should be doing now. We want to, again, alter those expectations, try and stay in the present, and just give ourselves a little time to breathe, a little bit of space. And that's why I always like to start by kind of educating people, because if I can help validate that for you, the hope is you can start validating it for yourself. So that if you're messing up at work, or if you forgot somebody's birthday, or if the laundry is piling up, or your house is messier than you'd like it to be, you can say, you know what, I'm grieving and I just am going to need to take some time. It's not going to look the way it used to right now. I just need to be compassionate with myself, and I need to give myself permission to take time and to rest and not to put the same pressure on myself as I always have. It's like the rules just really, really need to change. So one thing that we tend to do better, and I don't know if it's because we feel we can see the results or something in a different way, but we often tend to be more committed, I think, to our physical health. You know, if we're trying to lose weight or if we're trying to bulk up in the gym. And so we kind of deny our emotional health in the same way, because it's not as easy to see what's wrong. And then it doesn't seem as easy to see the results on the other side of it. But there are times that we can find things that are addressing both our emotional health and our physical health. And I think those are the things that we want to be trying to pursue. If we can find something that's simple, that keeps us in the present, something that doesn't take a lot of other people to be involved, but something we could be doing on our own or with someone else that we care about and that we trust. If it's something that it's accessible to everybody, I mean, that's really what we're looking to do here. And that's going to be different for everybody. We want to remember that with these losses, we're going to feel like we've lost a lot of control. We kind of walk through life thinking, you know, I get to choose where I want to work, who I want to marry, where I want to live, how many dogs I want to have, what car I want to drive, choices, choices, choices. We can be stressed by our choices, but we've got the control. We can do all this. And then these losses happen and we realize that we had no control over that. And it's frightening and it's really scary to feel so powerless, not just with what's happened, but what's going to come next. So I think we do spend a lot of time kind of jumping back and forth between the what happens, what comes next. We want to find ways to just stay right here. And I say to people often, if you're feeling lost, stop and take a look at your feet. That's where you are. And then that's where we're going to start. So I'm hoping it sounds like, you know, there's something already here in place with what you're interested in and what you're
Right.
pursuing, wanting to learn more about BioTouch and everything that it can offer. So do you have any questions for me or
Well,
anything you wanted to add?
that was awesome.
Okay.
And so, we had somebody talk about trauma once, and so I'm wondering,
Mhm.
have they done any research with brain connections, different parts of the brain with grief that you know of?
Well, yeah, I think that there is definitely a lot out there. And what they're finding is that, you know, we think of trauma, at least I think of trauma, or prior to this, I only thought of trauma in the highest level of trauma, you know, serious sudden car accident that you were present for, or, you know, being the person to discover someone who's passed, you know, any of those things. Or someone dying traumatically, whatever that may be, or getting the phone call. I'm finding in the work that I do that I think most people have been traumatized by their losses, even people that wouldn't necessarily be something that you would fit in that same category. Maybe it was someone who was 95 years old, that was sick for 2 years. The person in the aftermath of that had to sit with their loved one, watch their physical decline, be present for them as they became bedbound and, needed more support and couldn't go to the bathroom on their own anymore. I truly believe do suffer their own traumas. And I do think it needs to be recognized as such, because I think it's important to realize that those are some of the things that makes it hard. I was talking before about people not being able to sleep at night. Trying to find that time and that space and that quiet to rest can be difficult because there's so many intrusive thoughts. And I do think oftentimes they come from the trauma that some people go through, following their loss.
Well, and that's interesting, because when we had someone talk about trauma, they talked about this disconnect between the frontal and the back lobe, which people in trauma don't know where they are in time and space, basically. And your idea in grief of just looking down at your feet, just where are you right now, was an awesome little reminder for all of us, which is sort of why we do BioTouch. It puts you into the present moment. So, take a little moment to explain your website, because I was pretty intrigued by that, because it seems like you have support groups on there, you do individual work with people. Why don't you explain a little about your website for people?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was working as a bereavement coordinator for many years for a local hospice, and I was finding that people were reaching out looking for support. And I live in an area where there's a lot of resources. We've got a lot of good hospitals, and I'm near Philadelphia, just in case I didn't mention that before. And so there's a lot around here. So you'd figure nobody's going to be short on finding groups, but I still kept finding that people were struggling. They either couldn't make it to the groups, it was too far, they had to work, they had childcare issues, they had transportation issues. We have people who don't drive, they're older, and maybe they just, they can't drive, or they don't drive at night. There was always something that, even with good resources, that there wasn't available. So, it occurred to me that it would be maybe an idea to have a place and a space for people to come and to gather and to find people who are going to understand what they're going through. So the website has forums, and it's broken down into types of losses, whether it's a loss of a parent, a loss of a spouse or a partner, a loss of child. And then even within that, we have sudden losses, people who've had a loss to caregiver. We do have a COVID loss forum for people now. So people can go in there and find people to connect with. And in that way, that part's sort of like Facebook. You make a comment, someone can make a comment, you can come back and read the comment. But in addition to that, we also do have a live chat room that people can go just jump on, and then someone's right there. And if they just need someone to talk to right at that moment, then they can find someone to talk to through the chat room. So that's what the website can help with. Beyond that, for me personally, I offer individual support through coaching, either over the phone or via Zoom. And then I do facilitate support groups as well, running 2 right now. I do them as what's called closed groups. So they're not necessarily ongoing. They have a beginning and an end. And that's because there's a lot of educational pieces. We do a lot of kind of homework with it. So it's important to be part of all of it. But I do have one ongoing general grief group that I run as well.
Well, you're doing good work, Karen. I mean, I even noticed there was some kind of price on there. It was like very reasonable. Like, what was 99 cents was for something to get
for the chat room. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, really nice, help support, keep the website going. So it's really inspiring to see when people are offering things like you are in the same way that our foundation is, just trying to get healing to people. And
absolutely
we appreciate what you're doing, and we appreciate this information you gave us. So
yeah, thank you. Well, same to you. Yeah, it's a really, it sounds like really important work, and an interesting and wonderful mission to be spreading out to people.
Whew, that was good.
That was good. That was interesting. I was taking some notes, and I thought, BioTouch.
Yeah, right.
BioTouch.
Right.
Oh my goodness, BioTouch.
Yeah, I really appreciate the work she's doing. And
yeah.
One of the things I noted on there about the commonality of grief around the world, and how that's why BioTouch is so perfect.
Right.
It's the
I know.
commonality of a body, and we hold this grief in this body. So
Just taken off on our show on Monday, the treatment for the people.
yeah, for the people. And the other thing I really liked, she talked about people don't understand you when you're in grief, and there's this isolation that goes on, and how I even made the note on the comments how BioTouch is so perfect because you don't have to understand their grief, you don't have to try to change it, but the minute you do that greeting, you live in that grief with them without trying to change something, and that's what I really was inspired by.
Yeah, I think it's important, and she noted this, at least for me, that grief and going through that process is unique to each one of us. And there's all these reasons why that she was talking about, and I was thinking that she's like, something that's accessible to everybody, and let's keep it simple. And I thought, well, you can do the same points on 10 different people. They're going to hold their grief 10 different ways, but BioTouch addresses in the same way.
Yep, yep.
It's perfect.
And that's what we're going to teach you all. If you want to take a moment, everybody, and go to justtouch.com/workbook. If you have any comments about Karen's presentation, please put it in the comments so people later can look at it too.
Right.
Just your thoughts and your feelings about it. And so, because BioTouch just meets everybody with the same set of points, we're going to turn this over to Bev while I do behind the scenes work. And we're going to just start teaching you some of the sets of points.
Yes. And, I just wanted to mention, if you're downloading the workbook, um, for every workshop that we do on each condition, we always, on our front page of our workbook, we always have kind of an overview of the actual condition, and a little write-up of some information about the condition for you, so that you can really get connected with what the sets of points are that we're going to be using in each issue. So let's go to the second page, which is the one that says at the top, what is BioTouch? And basically BioTouch is, it's a hands-on healing technique that uses the first two fingers of the hand to touch lightly on the skin. And that's the definition of BioTouch. A light touch, that one person touching another lightly on the skin. And as you're going to see, the technique itself has certain sets of points that addresses everything that the body can hold. So it's a very simple technique to learn. And the reason that we do these workshops is because we can totally address one condition at a time. And so it's not so overwhelming for you to learn. It's very easy for you to learn the few sets of points that we offer for each condition. So we have a couple of bullets that we usually go through for those of you who are new to BioTouch. And we'll make it very easy that even children can learn it, practice it effectively. In fact, we say, everybody is effective. Everybody can have BioTouch. Everybody can use BioTouch. It's for everybody, not just, you don't have to go through a lot of things to get there, but it's a very accessible, as Karen was mentioning, very accessible for everybody. It's a complement to any healthcare program or whatever you may be doing under a doctor's care, a certain diet, maybe you're doing another technique. And BioTouch is a complement to everything. it fits with everything, whatever you're doing. It's safe, it's non-invasive, and very effective, and it only enhances whatever you're doing. So it's lovely. It has no levels of ability. You don't, there's no real long-term training or levels. Like I said before, it's available to everybody. And so everybody is effective the first time that they use BioTouch. And then the last one, BioTouch requires no special preparation. You don't have to, have a particular philosophy or a belief or be in little perfect state of mind. You just really need to just care about helping another person who might be going through pain, stress, grief, loss, whatever it is. You are going to be able to help them. So that's pretty much the four basic issues that we wanted always to address with you. So let's get into the actual technique. And to begin, you always want to wash your hands before you use BioTouch. It's, again, one person touching another on the skin. And as you're going to see, we're going to always begin with the set called the greeting. You're going to be using the first two fingers of each hand and holding. So pretend like it's like a butterfly touch on the skin. And then we hold each sets of points, each point 6 to 8 seconds. You can practice it anywhere. And again, you're going to be totally effective. So we do have a few terms. We don't usually go over them in the workshop. These are, except we always kind of like the associate. I like this, is the person who performs the procedures in the manual. The term associate is used as a matter of convenience. However, the dictionary describes the role of one who is inspired to pursue this work as one often in the company with another, implying intimacy or equality, and then one having an interest in common with another. And that's the one thing about BioTouch that we know. It equalizes everyone. And of course, you have an interest in common with another. You care about them. So these are terms that we use when you're actually learning the technique. It's kind of like BioTouch language. So if you're interested, of course, in learning the technique, you will be learning those terms. So let's begin. Let's, again, the greeting. Always perform the greeting prior to doing anything else, using any other sets of points on someone. You always want to do that. And I think our wonderful video, I'm going to let Paul just go and you can watch it there.
The greeting is always performed at the beginning of each session. It's the only set that uses one hand and the only set that indicates which hand to use. The greeting is performed with the dominant hand. If you are right-handed, use your right hand. If you are left-handed, use your left hand. The greeting is made by touching at point 1, which is in the fleshy area just below the bottom of the breastbone or sternum. Hold this point for 6 to 8 seconds. Then, with the same two fingers, touch point 2 on the back. To find point 2, look for the big bone at the base of the neck. From here, move 1 to 1.5 inches to the left. This is point 2. Hold this point for 6 to 8 seconds. More than one associate may work with a recipient provided that all of the associates perform the greeting. If the associate or the recipient leaves the session, or if someone who hasn't done the greeting touches either the recipient or the associate, the greeting must be reestablished. Then the session may proceed from where it was interrupted.
Oh, okay. Yep, the greeting. If we say if you can only do the greeting with someone, you've already begun a healing process for the body. It really is the key that opens up the body and establishes an amazing equalizing relationship with the other person. It's lovely. So let's go to the first set. Pardon me? Oh, you mean, okay. So yes, in the manual, if you ever see that, we do have, there's 2 pages. One is a diagram of the sets of points. And then the other page goes into detail on how to perform the actual set, as you will see. It's very, very well laid out, actually.
Yeah. And those words are exactly the same as the video words. So you have
Yes,
different ways of learning it.
exactly. Yeah. Yes, indeed. Okay. Anything else, Paul, before we go on?
No, that's good.
Okay. So let's go to the first set of points, or the second set of points, the headset. And if you heard, what Karen was talking about, the headset is really, really important for, depression, grief, any trauma, anything related to the brain, insomnia, anything that might be, to help the process of grieving is really important. It's interesting because Paul was asking about the frontal and the back lobes, and that first, as you'll see in the video, the first set of points, that A and A, is really powerful. So let's go ahead and watch the video.
The headset can be used to address conditions related to the brain. There are 4 steps in this set. In step 1, use through fire to touch points A and A. Point A on the back of the head is in the center of the neck at the base of the skull.
Oh, here it is.
Point A on the front of the head is at the center of the forehead, where the forehead begins to curve to the crown. Step 2 is performed in crossfire with the fingers of each hand touching on opposite sides of the head. Hold at X and point 5 is opposite hold point X at the base of the skull. Step 3 is performed in matching fire, touching points 1 and 1, 2 and 2, 3 and 3, 4 and 4, 5 and 5. Finally, in step 4, place the open palms of both hands on the head covering points 1 through 3. Be careful, don't let your hands touch each other.
So we had a problem for those, the sound. I don't know, the sound all got, so it's still showing you. So it didn't show in words A and A. So why don't you just show that?
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's
Just show it on
really-
yourself, A and A.
I will. Okay, so A and A is in the you see in the diagram. It's the first one. You take both of your fingers, and on the back of the neck, at the bottom of the base of the skull, is that indentation. You place your 2 fingers there, and the other 2 fingers, they are right in the middle of the forehead as the forehead begins to curve back to the crown, and you are through the head, the front and the back of the head. So this is the very first step in that headset, and it's very effective.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know why it went. And then points 1, 2, and 3 are on that ridge. If you want to feel that on yourself, just from the side to the top.
When you follow that ridge along the head.
And your X and your 5 are at the base of the skull on the side of the muscle. And again, if you get that workbook and you click on it, it'll take you right to that video again. So sorry about that little
And it
mishap.
should work.
Yeah, it'll always work that way.
It'll work that way, yeah.
So, all right, we can go on.
Yeah, headset's a really great set for this condition. So let's go to the third set that we're going to offer for grief and loss crisis, and that is called the stress and anxiety set. And what happens sometimes we do have physical manifestations of emotional, mental stress, as it says. But what's interesting is BioTouch addresses the body. And Karen was saying that self-care, we always think of that as the body. But what's lovely about BioTouch is after a while, we start to notice this self-awareness begins to happen. And that's what addresses emotional and the mental stress. So, the key is this, what's the word I'm looking for? Consistency. And so the more that you use BioTouch in these situations, the more your body's going to respond, but also those other parts of ourselves that are in the body. So let's go ahead, and this is a lovely set, very easy, as you're going to see, but very, very effective.
The stress set may be used to address any manifestation of physical, emotional, or mental stress, as well as anxiety and shingles. Hold at X, which is in the fleshy area just below the bottom of the breastbone. It is the same as greeting point 1. Then with the other hand touch points 1 and 2, which are the same points as in the heart set. These points are found by imagining a line running from the notch at the top of the breastbone to a place on the left breast where the nipple would be on a youth. Divide this imaginary line into thirds. Point 1 is at the top of the first third. Point 2 is at the top of the second third. These points may be touched repeatedly, and remember to touch each point for at least 6 to 8 seconds.
Okay.
And there you have it.
There you have it.
Very, very, very simple, and yet very, very effective. And again, all of those things that Karen was talking about that she has discovered in her own work, BioTouch is so, it's amazing.
Yeah.
You can, yep.
So, sorry about all the little glitches there. You know, I don't know what things just sort of disappear out of the thin blue air. We always have problems.
It's technology. You're pretty perfect, but not always.
Yeah, I know. So, hey, we hope that you had a good time listening to Karen. She has an awesome website. You really should check it out. I've spent a lot of time on it, and it's just neat that she has a global community of people sharing their grief and their loss. So
wonderful.
Now we hope we can bring BioTouch into that global community. We had some folks from all over the country, and Tabu was with us today too from Singapore.
Oh,
so
lovely.
Singapore, is that Singapore? Is she from?
Singapore,
yeah.
I think.
Yeah. So it's BioTouch is global, and we hope that you're going to take the time to learn it. Remember, go to justtouch.com/workbook. And it'll have a link to those videos, and you won't lose the sound. So next month, what's our workshop next month?
Oh gosh,
should have been ready for that one. Oh, childhood ear infections.
Oh,
yes, and we have a doctor that's going to talk to us about that. So
wonderful.
Go to our website, justtouch.com, and you can see all the different workshops. If you know of any professionals, the month after that, we have Zagul from Egypt.
Yes.
Is going to talk to us about what ADHD?
Autism,
yeah. So that's going to be an awesome one. So, these are getting to be really awesome little workshops, and we are glad that you joined us for this one. It'll have a replay on YouTube, on our Facebook, and we'll send out an email for everybody. So thank you, Bev, for teaching us the points.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening.
Yeah, we'll see you all next month, or tune in on Mondays with Bev and Paul. We'll talk some more about grief and loss. This is a great little topic.
It is.
Good night, everybody.